Online is the new offline. Metaverse is the new online. Morning, everyone. I was just mentioning to one of our friends from WebEngage that I'm walking into a MarTech conference in the morning from the airport, and I had a MarTech moment. I was scheduled to land in Delhi at 9:45, and I was trying to get some data points last evening on how the transportation is going to happen from the airport. Do I need to have a driver? Do I need to get his number? How do I locate him? And I was told that once you land, things will be taken care. The hotel would inform you, not a problem. And my tickets, which were for the flight, were booked by Make My Trip from that portal. And what was interesting, that at precise 9:45, when the wheels touched down and I switched on my phone, I had a nudge, a push notification or in a message which came up on my screen and said, your cab can be located from this blue smart cab service provider. You have an OTP that you can use to avail some amount of discount, and you pay the driver once you reach your destination. And that's a state where as a customer you're kind of trying to figure out where's your baggage, how do you go about exiting the airport. And it's extremely convenience that is cited on your phone saying, okay, I'm sorted, I just need to pick up my luggage and go that way. And that's exactly what happened to me. I figured out where that blue smart cab kiosk is. I went to the level 1, took my cab, and I was 10 minutes away from the hotel, and I receive a call from the Le Méridien. Sir, have you landed? And I said, yes, and I'm 10 minutes from the hotel. But sir, the driver is waiting in the arrival hall. And I said, fantastic. And I said, but I'm already here with the cab that I picked up, and Make My Trip push this message, so I assume that's the one you booked. He said, no, sir, we have a cab and we have the driver. They're waiting for you. And then the driver promptly calls up in a sleepy tone, sir, have you arrived? I said, yes, I arrived many years back, but I'm reaching the hotel now. And that's what struck in my mind is a true power of MarTech. Looking at the data points, building that insight, triggering that connect at the right time, in the right point of reference to an individual, and striking the deal. And that's what Make My Trip did. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the MarTech conference. The future is only getting excited. Okay, can we start? Can you just play start with that video, please? So I have a couple of slides and I'm going to just talk through and put across my point of view on this. So what you saw is very much true in most of our lives. Actually, that desk kind of represent my current workstation. And I've been working for long, so I kind of relate to all those phases when I see how the clutter on the desk is now replaced to a clean table, which I used to aspire. And at times I used to notice senior management calling out, look at our table, we don't have any clutter. You guys seem to be thronged with papers and everything. But today, the whole digital transformation has revolutionized the way our workstations look. Our communication, our accessibility to engage with people, everything has got replaced, right from writing pads, all of it is getting replaced, right? And that's digital transformation at scale. It's not just smart tech, it's everything in our life. I'm sure if I had to run a quick poll around here, I would have enough, hand share, which would reflect the reference of how many of you order food online, how many of you, engage on a video conferencing using your hands, mobile. How many of you have experienced the Zoom moment when we went through the pandemic phase, right? So life really transformed in that 2.5 years. We never expected something of that sort to hit us, and that's the point in regards to how the pandemic has transformed the whole digital and paced up the digital transformation, which was already on and was underway, but the real growth or the speed it caught up was during the pandemic, because we were all homebound, we were not socializing. I remember my teenage daughters socializing through a app called House Party. Did any one of you hear of House Party? Anyone in the room? Yeah, I think we are all below that, yeah, above that age. But yeah, teenagers were on House Party. In fact, they had a moment when House Party was wrapping up. So the whole definition of one-to-one socializing, I think it's nice to see in a hall we are all got together. But otherwise, for the longest of that period, we were all stuck on our seat, wearing a blazer on the top, wearing our shorts at the bottom, and sitting and attending a virtual conferences. So we've all had those moments. So yes, in the pandemic, things changed. In fact, the whole adoption exercise was not something which was like we used to call the digital native audience, people who have been brought into the world during a phase when there's a revolution on the digital side. I think across generation, baby boomers, Gen Z, millennials, the new young emerging generation, all of them were equally struggling to figure out how do they go about managing things, whether it came to students trying to pick up the school lessons, whether it came to office goers trying to figure out how do they connect with their teams or getting their work going on as usual. I think everything just changed. And what it also did is that it forced adoption and it scaled adoption. So you saw a surge on number of digital touch points, whether it means the OTT. We saw significant growth. Cinemas were shut, televisions were churning out some real old content, which is why one of the reasons Doordarshan, when it played up Mahabharat after God knows zillions of years, we had an all-time high TRP. That was the most viewed shows. And it was like, going back in the 90s when probably, I can reflect it that when I was growing up, we would have this family moment on a weekend, sitting around a idiot box and watching a Mahabharat. And that was getting repeated in today's context with an all-time high TRP with Mahabharat being played up on a DD. So these were things which were never expected, but all of it was visible during the pandemic. Shopping, people who were used to going to the Kirana store, going to a mall, suddenly adopted to ordering things by just going through a stack of products through e-commerce, through the physical brick and mortar stores. We saw a transformation happening in some of the retail points. They suddenly brought in their SKUs out there. So the limited point is that the digital transformation acceleration happened when the pandemic set in. And by the time we came out of the pandemic, the world has changed globally for all of us. Let's look at the India Bharat story. When I used to be in FMCG, more than 20 years back, having started my career in Pepsi sales, we used to experiment with small SKUs. We used to hear the lever stories of small pack SKUs happening in the Bharat. A Bharat, which is, the imagery provided was, it is remote, it doesn't have the purchasing power, it doesn't look at, the same aspiration as India. India is at a different level, Bharat is at a different level. Bharat was all those hinterland cities, not well connected with infrastructure, not having access to things like what were available back then for India. That transformed. Complete transformation happened. In the last 2.5 years, the divide between India and Bharat has gone. If I reflect on the categories that I represent, which is the investment side, the highest number of demat accounts, and I'm repeating this, the highest number of demat accounts have been opened in tier 2 and tier 3 towns, right? We are sitting as we speak on over 100 million demat accounts pan India. And remotest of the place, we are seeing numbers coming up on the India map. We are hearing chatter, we are hearing conversations around investment when we look at the listening intelligence on investment on various asset classes. So Bharat is really evolved. And I'm sure a lot of you already know e-commerce. The biggest purchase on the e-commerce side happens in Bharat, right? They get a large chunk of orders that comes in for the e-commerce side. What I'm showing you here is the transformation at Bharat. If you look at the surge on the influencers, right? We saw a huge surge of influencers coming in the pandemic phase. And who were these? The TikTok audience merging into the Instagram reels. They were the Bharat. I mean, a couple of months back, I was at an AdCon and we were exposed to a set of influencers, well dressed, smartly dressed youngsters, and they came from the hinterland. And they were having millions of followers who were following them for either their ability to curate content, which is, on the comical side, or it's about their ability to show some great dance moves. And you saw this kind of an audience. Today, we see a lot of emerging influencers in these hinterlands who are talking about products and categories which you never expect them to talk. So they talk with a lot of confidence. They talk about investing. They talk about tax planning. They talk about stock market. And therefore, that really represents that the divide is shrinking. There is some amount of parity of purchase. There is some amount of accessibility that the whole digital transformation has made easy. Also, if I have to take a little step back and say, when did it really pick up scale? I think the time when the 2016, 8 o'clock in the evening, when we were all sitting comfortably at our homes, and then someone said, there is going to be a speech from someone very important. And we switched on to the TVs, and we saw overall confusion in the minds of people. And then we saw for months people standing in queues outside banks, trying to figure out how do they manage their cash flows, right? I think that's where the transformation engine got kicked in. We saw the Paytms, we saw the payment modes emerging at scale where people started opting. And today it's replaced even traditional banking where the payment gateways are making access to money transfer. Like right now I got off the cab and I handed out to him, a note, and he said, sir, I don't have change. My next instant question was, do you have a Google Pay or a Paytm? And he said, yes, sir. I said, do you have a scan? He said, here. We exchanged greetings through the Paytm app and the money was transferred, right? So this is the transformation that we are all living in. And that's important because understand each one of you in this room is a data point. Each one of you is a currency for someone. Each one of you is being traced as a potential customer to be targeted for something that you fit in as a relevance, right? Because your apps are listening. Your travel is being tracked. Your behavior on the intranet is being tracked. Your consumption on what kind of content you consume is being tracked. And all of this is coming as data points for marketeers like yourself to make sharper targeting, right? So as we adopt this change, we are becoming more qualified data points under the journey of digital transformation that's going to make the future purchase sale more sharper. Let's look at it. I touched upon briefly OTT. We saw an all-time high adoption on the OTT platform. When there was no new content coming on television, people started forced movement to Netflix and some of the OTT. This suddenly, gave a jump start to a lot of OTT players who were considering entering the market space at some distant future to speed up and get content out there. Some of them repackaged their old television content and played it up on an OTT feed, right? We saw some of the well-established and more premium set of OTT players dropping their pricing because data in India is the cheapest and access to entertainment became the need of the hour, especially when people were not able to sit around and exchange their thoughts. Entertainment, social media became their solace, became their go-to place. And today we know for a fact with this surge, the future for OTT is promising. We are looking at almost a 1 to 2 billion going up to 12 to 13 billion in distant future. More than 40 plus OTT players, regional, national, language based, are either there or entering into the country. And what's going to happen next? We are all hearing by Diwali we are going to hit 5G. That's going to be another transformation. That's going to shift the accessibility, the speed referencing, the access to various content. Just in a jiffy, it's going to be available on our handsets once we have the 5G coming. And that's going to be another big transformation that's going to hit us. And why am I going to bring all this to you? On a forum of Martech, you will see the connect. A 360-degree view of your consumer today. What's happened post-pandemic? He's worrying about economy. He's thinking about health. He's thinking about mental health. How many of us ever heard the word mental health? How many of ever thought that children will talk about mental health? How many ever expected mental health conversations to come out in open? We've all been grown up, we've gone through a struggle, but this stress point of 2.5 years has changed life for everyone. So mental health, fitness, finance. I am lost my job. Companies are no longer hiring. I'm out of a B school, I don't have a job. I am in a job, I don't have security. Why? Because no one knew that this is going to hit us. We always thought the growth engine could just vary and it only affects your increments and your bonuses. And suddenly I'm in a phase where I cannot sustain the job because the company cannot sustain employment. There was reverse migration that happened to the hinterlands. You had people who were serving at across community workers to people working at corporate jobs, taking a pause in life. We all had a pause moment because there was a state of confusion, which was called the state of silence. We just did not know what's going to happen now. We did not know what's the end date. All we knew, variant 1, variant 2, Wuhan, Brazil. We just heard all these, stories around different countries and we saw, different videos coming out, but we didn't know what's the end date. We didn't know how to prepare. We did not know what happens to the ticket I had booked, right? So there was a state of confusion. So these things brought in a changed attitude. Entertainment and media, like I mentioned, people went on the digital side, they went on to scan content. YouTube saw a jump in their consumption. People went into consuming audio podcast. That again saw a huge jump in consumption, right? So people started listening to content on podcasts because that is still manageable, doesn't need shoot. A lot of fresh content on podcasts came in through various platforms, Spotify and the others, that just surged up their content accessibility and people started adopting to it. So instead of a morning routine of just watching something mindlessly on a social feed, people started listening to podcasts, having interesting conversation with friends over phone around what they heard. They were exchanging those ideas because that's the only thing which kept them sane, right? Look at the digital influence. What happened? People said, let's do upskilling. I can manage, I can do a side hustle, I can hustle in life. My boss sits in his house, I sit in my house. The screen can be turned dark. I don't need to be on the camera every time. I do a side hustle. Not only him, children did side hustles. What did they do? They suddenly figured out, young kids, one of the problems that the parents are facing today for kids who were probably 7, 8, 6, really young, who would have taken a couple of years to really adopt to digital at scale, were sitting in a classroom with their camera on and a second tab. And the second tab was introducing them to the world of gaming. They had them looking at YouTube videos in the breaks because they didn't have to go out of the classroom and meet up with friends. So they were on a second tab, which was gaming. They were getting friends coming into a gaming zone. Imagine, that's the future coming in. People are getting into another zone at the same time. That's what happened. A lot of people also took up to becoming social influencers. Social media adoption happened. DIY things happened. People started learning how to do things on their own because they got time. They had time, so they said, let's upskill. People adopted to online classes. A lot of courses got a growth jumpstart during this period. Educational content started coming up big time. A lot of edtech companies started launching. Online shopping. We saw a transformation from brick and mortar to online platforms. Not only the e-commerce, which were the dominating, you suddenly had your local stores offering it to you online. JioMart came into making. People could connect to the kiranas using the JioMart. A lot of these started coming in at that phase. Emerging categories. Suddenly everyone got conscious about hygiene. So every time they shake hands, they now go and do a sanitizer. Right? Which was not that was not a habit earlier. You today go and shake hands, people do this. Right? So I think habits changed. So sanitization, hygiene became dominating thought process. Demographic and lifestyle changes. Food that I eat. Suddenly, haldi acha hai, nimbu, kada. All these terms started coming in everyone's life. Where people started discovering amla. They started discovering these things which they never took it seriously. That they were your cure to avoid COVID. So those became part of your day-to-day life, and they still sustain in people's life. Mental and health issues started getting conversed openly at a dining table. What also happened is, in the traditional form, what would happen? Before this whole digital transformation, what would happen to all of us? We would get exposed to a messaging, we would get exposed to a communication, which would be primarily mass media, television, print. Based on that, we would generate some kind of an interest, walk into a shop, walk into a store, look at the various brands offering a similar product, make a choice, pick up the product, go home, use the product. Right? That was our life for the years, right? What happened with the whole transformation phases? Can any one of you recognize the shape here? Or the figure that's connecting? The fish bowl approach. Suddenly brands had to be at every touch point because consumer behavior changed. He was no longer looking at one data point. He was getting influenced at one. He would reconsider and go to another. He would go to another set of people to get some inputs. He would reverse back and come to the original data point. And that's complicated the whole path to purchase. So the traditional IDA model got replaced by the fishbowl. And this added to the complexity of decision making and a challenge for today's marketers. Because this is your current state of customers. And when you say customers, please reflect yourself first inward. This is your state. You're behaving like this, maybe not for all categories, but you tend to validate every decision today. You do cross-referencing, you do go to YouTube, you do look at blog sites, you do try to talk to friends, you do visit a store, you do go to some other purchase center and look at, okay, what are the comparative benefits? Then you come and decide when you want to buy, how you want to buy. What just happened? Anyone, what just happened? Did anyone notice it? That split second is your current attention span. That was us. That's exactly how we are being molded now. This is our current state of attention. Why? Exactly why. Look at this. Interesting, beautiful, multicolor, circular reference of what we are going through. The touch points we are engaged with. आज शो हम नेटफ्लिक्स पे देखेंगे, कल हम प्राइम पे जाएंगे, तीसरे दिन हम हॉटस्टार पे जाएंगे, क्रिकेट हम हॉटस्टार पे देखेंगे, म्यूजिक हम एप्पल म्यूजिक सुनेंगे, पॉडकास्ट हम IVM पे जाएंगे, मेरा फेवरेट शो मैं स्पॉटिफाई पे देखूंगा, बैंक का ट्रांजैक्शन मैं एक्सेस पे करूंगा या ICICI पे करूंगा, पेमेंट मैं गूगल पे करूंगा, खाना मैं जोमैटो पे लूंगा, वी फास्ट और whatever, स्विगी से मैं जीनी लेके किसी के घर पे खाना भेजूंगा, टैक्सी में ओला लूंगा, उबर लूंगा, दोस्त के लिए ओला करूंगा. This is happening, right? You're experiencing so many touch points, and that's part of your life today. And what does it mean? That the complexity is just getting enhanced because I do not know where you are. As a marketer, I have no clue where you are. You're practically at some place in all these points. So there's no linear way of access to you today. Right? And therefore, the path of communication has the much relevance that it needs today. It was not so much as today's time. If you look at any 10 touch point media strategy, you'll have 10 different consumer journeys getting carved out based on his behavior from the touch point he's coming in. So that's our state currently. What does it mean? We are desperately trying to connect to a disconnected audience. He's no longer sitting in one chair. He's literally doing round robin here. So imagine a customer, we all are standing here and we observe him. He sometimes sits here, he sometimes sits here, he sometimes goes there, he sometimes goes there. And we are all trying to figure out how do I catch him. That's our state as marketers, right? So we have to figure out where is he going. Therefore, we need to understand who's our customer. We need to get enough data point, and that doesn't come by just having data in silo, which I will cover up ahead. What I'm saying is you need to have insight. You need to have progressive profiling. You need to know deeper and deeper and deeper about him because that's the only way you can get sharper around how do you go about reaching him. You need to be real time. I gave you my own personal example. Landed, wheels touched the tarmac. I had a push from Make My Trip. You need to know, right? The only data point with them was a ticket was booked for my flight. And they used that to know this landing time is this, let's push it. They took that call. Now, because I've taken this next step, anytime in future, if I Make My Trip, I validate myself as a data point for potential purchase through Make My Trip for a cab. Right? That's what the engagement in real time is. And how do you do it? You take an omni-channel. They have WhatsApped me. They have SMS'd me. They have emailed me. My tickets came on email. My update came on WhatsApp. My reference of cab was on WhatsApp, not on an email. Because they understand by the time you land, you're not going to sit and scan your email. They pushed it on WhatsApp or an SMS, which SMS is maybe more expensive. So WhatsApp. So they've used the right channel to connect with you. That's the omni-channel approach you need to understand, and you have to progressively test it. You will never have a complete perfection. You will have to test it and progressively add to data points of your customer. So omni-channel. Enhancing the user experience by personalization. That's the next level. You know, how do you make myself special, right? If someone connected your data points, he would know exactly who you are. And if he can get your details from a cookie pool to a data point, he could address you with your name. He would understand what you like. If I have preferred the electric vehicle today, because that's the only option right now at the airport, or it's the most relevant option, the next time they would push me an electric vehicle first. If I declined it, it's a different thing. But they've taken a data point of personalization there. They've understood my user journey. Then understanding the key metrics. What was the acquisition cost? What's the lifetime value? These are emerging trends that we will, based on categories, we will figure out. They would look at it from a point of my ticket or the payout I did for the cab. So the next time they know if we have to push him a cab, we don't push him a search fare. We give him an offer which allows him to be at a certain threshold, which will adopt to the purchase. Right? So that's another point which goes in as a data feed. What are our current challenges? This is practically everyone's problem. It's not anyone's problem. I think we all either are living this problem We are progressively maturing through this situation. So currently what happens in typical organizations pre-pandemic, mostly datas were in silos. There would be a separate space, and again it's scattered. It's at different people having data, right? They all become gatekeepers of data. They don't want to bring it into one funnel. Certain mature organizations, they bring it all together, but there are a lot who kind of, you have a sales data with a set of people, you have an operational data with another set of people, you have a customer service data which is with another set of people, you may have product SKU data with another set of people, you may have financial data with or payment related data with some other people. You got to bring all of it, right? It's the same guy who's going through all these interfaces. It's like, one of us being a customer stand and we're supposed to be served, and we have 10 people around us. Look at my mind. How am I thinking? Who's my server? Is he going to serve me? Is she going to serve me? Is this guy going to serve me? Who's going to address my problem? And this is what we experience, right? When typically, if you've noticed, sometimes we get agitated with a brand and we call up, we're told, you have to call up this other number. Then we call up the other number. He says, sir, no, I'm not the right person. I will send it to this one. Maybe you can mail it. It just agitates us, right? So I'm saying is that's a challenge when it comes to if things are in silo. Multi-channel approach. Audience are created at a channel level. I source him offline. There's a different approach to the audience I'm getting in. I source him online, a different approach. Within online, I'll have a multi-channel approach. Within that also, I will have a different approach. So you create mini audiences, not realizing that the same guy is going through multi-channel. And that's the issue when you don't have a rightful attribution model. A lot of decisioning today at the digital level happens on either last click, first click. You have to see the entire funnel. You have to gauge the platform relevance based on the touch points he's gone through. You may decided that I will hold more weightage on a certain level of clicks, but you got to see the funnel to know which are your relevant touch points. People are not coming linearly to you. When did we last saw a newspaper ad and just say, okay, I walk into the store? It doesn't happen that way, right? We get nudged through different, and then if we are maybe at a consideration stage, we'll go and do a purchase. But we are at an awareness stage. It's very difficult for us to just go and purchase. And that's something which is missing in a lot of places where people just look at the bottom of the funnel and say, the guy came in, why isn't he bought? Why is your channel not delivering? And sometimes the thought that erupts in my mind, and I haven't actually asked this to the people who raise this question at times, but I would want to, that the next time when you walk in the storekeeper will actually shut the door and say, bye. Because someone sitting behind the galla is saying, kharida kyo nahi? Now that's not how a consumer behaves. So you have to look at a approach which is different. Non-linear, inability to adjust messages or offers. It's like सबको एक साइज का जूता पहना दो, सब पहन के खुश है. Right? That's the approach. Most of the marketeers are challenged because if systems are not in place, you create a great communication. I like, you like, send it to all. कोई तो पसंद करेगा. That's the reference where you can't really adapt, customize, personalize. Lack of visibility. Data. We all hear data. Insight कौन बताएगा? Right? Similar web data देता है, Google Analytics data देता है, BIU data देता है, sales वाला data देता है, boss तो data बोलता है. Who's going to tell me what's the insight? How do I bring it all together? How do I paint the picture perfect? What is that guy doing? How do I relate to his behavior? That's where again we have challenges. Physical versus virtual acquisition again is a challenge we saw for a lot of companies who were not ready for the digital world, who had not transformed to whatever level, that they struggled, right? For that 2.5 years, they struggled because they didn't have the people, they didn't have the infrastructure, they did not have the connectivity, they just didn't know what hit them, right? But you will hear them complain, pandemic tha, business nahi grow hua, band karna pada. But they never envisage, and no wrong reason of it, the world never saw this coming. But that really shows that there is importance of knowing as we get into the next phase of progression, We need to appreciate the new things that are coming and start adapting. That change or adaptation can happen at different scale. You don't need to be at a mature state. You can start, but it's important to be there, because by the time you take a call, the world has changed again. Something else might hit you. So it's important to progress with the time. Organizational tech security, of course, that's a very important subject. We all are working in organization. That's extremely critical. That personal information, data-led securities issues need to be you have to be mindful when you are progressing on this path, because at the end of the day, you've got customers' trust when is engaged with you, right? If you lose the data point, you're losing a customer for life and you are affecting your brand imagery. So that's why it's important to be mindful about it. But these are challenges, right? The other challenge which people are left thinking, नए बंदों को लाएं, वही बंदों को ट्रेन करें, क्या करें? सब कुछ करना पड़ेगा. Your old guy is also equally relevant because uski personal life pe he is on digital. He is consuming audio. He is consuming social. He may not know the analytics of social, but he knows the platform. He is consuming OTT. He is aware of the front end. He may not know the back end. He is a customer in the digital world. He may not know the back end. So you may have to define what he can do. So you can't say, I will only get the people from outside. The world is moving so fast, you're not going to get the people from outside at scale. You'll get people today. The average age today we hear in the digital working population is less than a year, right? You can't rely only on people from outside. You have to upskill. You have to give the opportunity for existing people to mature. And yes, there is a certain amount of effort, but identify, do all three. Upskill, reskill, bring in a specialist. You cannot do either or. You have to do all of this. Now, what's this MarTech stack? I'm sure a lot of you guys are already familiar. These are some of the stack requirements. Okay, there's a reporting and a business intelligence requirement. Now, what is this requirement? It could be your Tableau, it could be your data lakes, structures, whatever those requirements are there, you need to have in place when you're investing into MarTech. Program management, your automation setup that you need to have it. You have to have your tracking of all your projects because there are multi-stream of things happening. You'll have cross-functional teams involved. You need to have productivity, project management tools, Asana, and all of these which help you to maintain your program's progression. Content personalization at a real time. There are tools available today. You have to talk to your MarTech partners. They have all of those on their stack. You know, nudges. Consumers are not as linear as dekha or purchase kar liya. You have to keep creating nudge. You have to nudge him with something that will move him from awareness to a consideration stage. So these nudges are important. And today we see the ecosystem of both mobile competing with the desktop. In some cases, mobile is much higher than the desktop, right? So you have to have these nudges not only on your website, you also have it on the mobile, the DAM. Okay, this is where a lot of your content gets structured, can be reused, repurposed, used. Otherwise, if you're building scale, you will only struggle in buying out new creatives, creating new creatives when you can actually use the DAM and just repurpose, change the headline, use some of the image, tap it out, move it in. Landing page tool. You'll need to create multiple landing pages. The good old days of stitching landing pages on a coded platform are gone. You need to create landing pages at scale. You need to have tools that can deploy those landing pages because you're literally running a campaign every now and then because your consumers, as you start creating your consumer cohorts, will require scalability and communication, accessibility on the website through differential landing pages, and traceability through your data points. So you cannot afford to say, I have a website, I have an existing landing page, and that's good. Because you will then be creating an imagery of the one shoe fits all size kind of an approach. You may define it, okay, I have a 18 to 25, I need to create a different visual. The offering could be the same. I have a women investor or a women client, I may want to bring in that imagery. I have an older population, I may create that differentiation. So these only are possible when you invest into these kind of stack. Email editors. You cannot afford to keep making emails from outside agencies and churning your dollars. You have to have the ability of an editor that can happen in-house. You can deploy an internal creative team who can use these tools to create that scale. And that you'll be surprised the amount of saving you will do instead of giving everything out to an external agency. You may start off with an external agency to have your learnings, but eventually it's better and advisable to in-house because the scale at which you will operate is something very different. Creative management platform, again, campaign delivery at scale. So these are some of the key elements of the stack. Maybe there are more. You can engage with Web Engage and get to know more about it. But I'm just telling you, these are some of the very usual that you need to have. And what's the ideal state of nirvana? This is the ideal state of nirvana. All of us fit in at for some product or some category on one of these stage. So whenever you are thinking of activities, campaigns, always know you have to be full funnel. Okay? I come from a city called Mumbai. वहाँ है ना जब हम ट्रेन में चलते थे, because Bombay had the train or what we call the locals much before the world of metros emerged and Delhi transformed the train culture. You know, I was very pleased to hear in the 90s, late 90s or early 2000s, I don't know which year was this, when the whole metro thing started coming up in Delhi, I had people who used to say, हाँ गाड़ी लेके जाना है, गुड़गांव जाना है, नोएडा जाना है, and then they saying shuttle है, 6 बजे की shuttle है. They were very nice to hear those, and then people slowly changed and said, हाँ metro ले लेते हैं, आ जाते हैं. So that cultural shift happened, you know, with that transformation. So my reference point for what I'm trying to make here is the fact that you cannot ignore any one stage of the consumer. He's at some stage for some product, right? And therefore, you have to be aware that your funnel is not just the guys who are right at the bottom. Look at that funnel. It's really shrinking. And most likely, if you've not really put the effort to build your presence on the top and the next tier, this guy is predisposed to a set of categories or predisposed to a set of brands, and therefore you're making it harder. It's like he's come to meet someone, and there's one side kick who comes and says, "Mere ko bhi mil lo." It's not going to happen, right? He's got a purpose. He's come for something. He's going to do that, and he's going to move on. A lot of us do this, right? If we go on a banking side, we go on to an event, we've gone there with that purpose. We will just go attend. If you're watching a movie, we are with that purpose. Uske beech mein dost bole niche mil lo. There has to be a definition of who that friend is. Otherwise, you will be watching that movie. So we are very linear or focused in that context. So it is difficult if you're only focusing here. And a lot of time we hear, you know, when marketers, the challenge we face inherently is that the focus is all here. But the conversation for a customer starts there. So it's important for you to be aware. So going back to my local example. So in Bombay, the culture is the trains are very crowded. Obviously with pandemic and things evolving, that's kind of getting settled and people are also conscious ki zyada paas mein mat baitho. But in the earlier days, the trains used to be clogged. People used to be hanging. You would probably find 10 people hanging outside the train. If anyone has been from Bombay or been to Bombay, you would relate to what I'm trying to say. And my special activity hoti hai jab train mein aate ho, especially when you're boarding the train at the start of the journey. You know, people put a rumal. They put a handkerchief on the chair. क्यों? Because कोई दोस्त आने वाला है next station से, तो उसके लिए रुमाल डाला हुआ है. Right? You have to understand your customer is at different stages. You have to occupy those chairs. In the digital ecosystem, you cannot say I'm going to be only on one place, because he could be his experience of your brand could be a reverse loop to create awareness if he's had a bad experience with you. So you have to know he's in a Z mod stage, he's on an F mod stage, at what stage he is. And it can keep going back, interchanged, based on his experience with the category, the brand, or information that he soaks in. So that is one part from a nirvana understanding. So whenever you plan, please keep your audience funnel in mind. You need to have a single lens of your customer, right? Today, I hear FMCG brands who've done tons of research for years, right? Every year, brand managers create tons of research. और वो research pile up होता है एक जगह पे. Part of the KRA done, research done, some KPI picked up, done. But it happens every year, every year, every year. How much time do they really invest into, and not only FMCG, I'm seeing a lot of brands, how much time and depth you get into the research. And all these isolated data points just get stacked up in one's life from a marketing experience. When you have a single view of your customer, you obviously need to identify, create identifiers, tags within the system, which identify who's your customer, who's not your customer. Today, you just have people walking into your website, people walking onto your app. You have cookie pools. But if you can tag them, identify who's my customer, you will start progressive profiling him. You'll profile him with the touch points that he's engaged with. You'll profile him with the behavior he demonstrates on the site, right? And it also helps you to bring in the non-tagged, unidentifiable data points and the identifiable data points to marry back to your customer cohorts to build a sharper picture, right? So brand world, you have SEO, very critical to bring in your traffic. So what keywords are ranking? What keywords? What stage are those keywords? A lot of time we hear keywords, but what are those keywords? Are they top of the funnel? Are they addressing awareness-led content? Are they mid of the funnel? Are they talking about consideration? What's the behavior of the user when he came from top of the funnel? Did he consume one content and did he go to another stage and decide on a product? Did he move from a awareness stage to consideration stage? Or did he go out? Do I have his identity? Did he leave a lead form? Can I target him with the lead details? Can I actually do a web notification next time he visits? Does he revisit me? The complexity just keeps rising. You have the brand tracks which tell you about market tierization, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Where are your traffic? Where are your demographics coming from? What is your gender coming? What are they saying about your category? What are they talking about your competition? You need to have these data point referencing, and if you can pick up some of that data, it starts helping to build progressive understanding of your brand. Sales data, how are we sourcing every week? What kind of customers are coming? What time of the day they are coming? What channel are they being sourced on? What day are they coming on? Right? You may suddenly see on a certain category only post 9 the PM. Like there used to be a joke on Myntra, 10 o'clock you will find husband, wife sitting and watching a show. The woman would be on a app and looking at the Myntra latest fashions. Right? Now, how do you know this? It's because the brand has probably analyzed that there is a high visit rate at 10 p.m. or around that p.m. Now, that's a data point to create new line of fashions and nudge that consumer who's consuming that. So, knowing your sales data, the MarTech world, you have the CRM, which is basically external facing. It's talking about the touch points from sales. It's talking about touch points in related to your service tickets. You need to bring it in because your same customer may be crying foul on one of your products and you don't realize it. So these data points need to come in a single view. You need to have a DSP, the publishing third-party sites. How is the data engaged there for your customers? You have the DMPs, CDPs. DMPs to take your hash data, cookie pool data and deploy it on third-party websites. CMPs to look at all the inward and outward touch points of your customers and with your tags to know how is he behaving to communication and build your campaigns accordingly. DMP to deploy your campaigns. What are the non-ID data? Research, survey, panels. These are things which will again add to build a sharper progressive profiling. Ad tech, you have ad servers to deploy. Bid stream, you bid for the Google world. You can start realizing what type of your customers are engaged on what kind of ad sets. Therefore, you rationalize your bid values. You rationalize your ad sets accordingly. Okay, so all this needs to come, and this is not easy. This is absolutely not easy. I can rattle it out in all confidence, but it's not easy. And it's not going to be a cakewalk for any one of us. We need to make those mistakes. We need to go through this journey and we need to keep sharpening. But this is the reality of today if you want to really evolve to have a single definite view of your customer. What's going to be the impact? You're going to have real-time actionable insights. If you have a customer data platform, you will have a single customer view. You will automate and know at what stage to nudge a customer based on his behavior because you've got so much of his progressive profiling that will help you to get sharper product communication, offering. You don't marry everything to all customers. So you'll get a lot more cost effective around it. This will make it sense for him because he will see value in what you're pitching. He likes black coffee and you keep giving him green tea, he's not going to like it, right? So if you know he likes black coffee, serve him a black coffee, he's going to appreciate it. Individualization at scale, of course, I've talked about the personalization benefit. And how does this all come together as an ecosystem? You have your first party data, you have your media data, you have all the deployment platforms that you can engage in, and then you have a measurability. This, in a way, nutshell, guys, come together if you invest into the MarTech, and that's something which all brands are struggling, all organizations are struggling. It's not an easy cakewalk. We all have to take because the world has changed, consumer habits have changed, consumer accessibility is difficult, and building that sharper depth and understanding of your consumer is the way forward for us. Can you just play this? The limiting point is, ladies and gentlemen, this is us. This is our brain. This is how we are consuming. This is the speed and scale at which things are transforming around us. If we don't wake up now, we've lost the game. While we'll continue to be that data point which is going to be tapped by potential brands. And just ending at the last statement, at the progress at which things are changing around us, online is the new offline. Metaverse is the new online. Thank you.